Tag along as I set up my book review page for Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. It's not technically a review since I do not review any part of the book, save for the star rating that I give the book. I only add a few of my favorite quotes and facts and combine that with photos that I got from the internet, as well as some hand drawn art to bring it all together. Hi, book friends. It's Rose Kwamboka here from Readers AA, a community that offers book therapy for obsessive compulsive readers. And by therapy, I of course mean we are here to fan your reading fire and fuel your book buying habits. All right, enough of the hit metaphors. So, welcome if you're new to my corner of the internet. I'd love and appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my channel and share with someone who would enjoy this kind of content. You can also connect with me on Instagram at readers underscore AA or at kwamboka underscore rose underscore. I'll leave all the links in the description box. Up from Slavery was among the boxload of books I read for Black History Month. Initially, I was very apprehensive about reading Black history books because of the heaviness that most of the books bear. But once I picked this book, it was downhill from there. I went down that rabbit hole and even did further research on it. So, a bit of a background on how I picked this book. It's actually a very funny, embarrassing story. So, we are all familiar with the name Booker T, or at least those of us born and raised in the 90s are. Yeah, Booker T. Any guesses? Yes, the wrestler. I'm not even sure why I'm telling you this story, but the other wrestlers that I knew of from that era were The Rock, only because he evolved and moved on to other things and he kind of stuck to my mind, and John Cena. Other than those three, I don't know anything else about WWE. I don't know who won how many championships. Anyway, back to the original Booker T. For as long as he could remember, he just went by the name Booker. No T, no Washington, until he got to school and the school roll was called. And then he noticed that all his other classmates were giving two names or at least three. So he thought that the teacher would expect of him to give two names at the very least. So when it got to his turn, he just said Booker Washington. But now, as I read the rest of the book, I realized that the name might not have been pulled from thin air because his stepfather was called Washington Ferguson. So later in his life, he discovers that the mom had actually given him a second name, which was Taliaferro, which is what the T stands for. As soon as he finds out, he adds the name to his name, and now he's called Booker T. Washington. For him, the T actually stood for something, but that was not always the case with all the other slaves. What used to happen was if a slave was called John, then he'd have another name, which was the name of the master. So if, say, the master is called Hatcher, he'd be called John Hatcher. But now, after the emancipation in 1865, they decided that they do not want to hold the master's name anymore. And so they had to give themselves other names. So usually, this John Hatcher would probably change his name to John S. Lincoln. But then the S in his name did not have to stand for any name. It was what they called their entitles. So other than Booker T, the rest of them probably had an initial in their name which meant nothing. So on my page, I start out with a sticker of Booker T when he was younger. That's there at the top center. And then in the middle, we have a map showing all the areas that Booker T visited or stayed for an extended period of time. So where he was born at Harris Ford and where he lived in Malden after the emancipation, where he went to school and where he started the Tuskegee Institute at the age of 25. To the left of the map, we have photos of buildings on ground when they were purchased for the Tuskegee Institute and the cottages that were formerly used as dorms for boys. And then we have Potter's Hall, which was the first building that was ever erected at Tuskegee Institute. You'll hear me say Tuskegee a lot. And then we have the pavilion, which was what was used as an auditorium before completion of the chapel. And then we have a bird's eye view of all the buildings at Tuskegee Institute. And then we have Booker T's house. That the colored photo is Booker T's house, and it's a recent photo. Because for the life of me, I can never draw a star or at least two stars that look alike. I decided to make a stencil that I'll use to trace out the stars, which I used for my book rating. So that's what I'm doing there. After that, I add a few book details like where and when I bought the book, if I bought the book, how long the book was, what format I consumed the book in, when it was first released, the genre of the book, who the publisher is, how much the book cost, etc. etc. Then the most fun part for me, and I tend to overuse these wooden stamps quite a bit. So here I'm adding the year of birth and year of death of Booker T. He died at a tender age of 59, although when I tell my sister that 59 is too young, she asked me like, what is young? I mean, Jesus died at 33 and he completed his work. So yeah, there's that. You'll notice I made an initial error where I wrote that he died in 1901 instead of 1915. I don't know why I thought 1901. Maybe something significant happened in 1901. I'm yet to find out. As I wait on the whiteout to dry, I'm going to go ahead and start on the Tuskegee Institute's timetable, which I liked because of the balance of classwork or bookwork and manual labor. And this is because throughout the book, Booker T insists on the need to balance the two because they are interdependent and not to demonize manual labor because as we all know, manual labor is what has built civilizations. So that's what I'm gonna do. Then I'll go back and finish on the on using the stamps to do the year of death, year of birth, and then go ahead and start on the quotes. The quote I'm writing here says, I'm convinced that there is no education which one can get from books that is equal to that which can be gotten from contact with great men and women. Instead of studying books so constantly, how I wish that our schools and colleges might learn to study men and things. This other quote says, I've learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. And the last one on this page says, every person ever persecuted should get consolation out of the great human law, which is universal and eternal, that merit, no matter under what skin found, is in the long run recognized and rewarded. Now that all the writing is done, I'm gonna add some decorations using the dot stickers. You can see how initially I was confused as to what size, what color of dot stickers to use, but we eventually figured it out. Et voila! Here's the final look of the page we just created. I'd like to hear from you what other Black history books you'd recommend for me to read. Please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay addicted to reading, of course.